And you can put down figures that say X% of people have lost a family member, but what won't be included in that is the X% of people who can't sleep, who are tortured every day by the thought that their loved ones died without them. I mean, you can see again how this still gets to me. It isn't going away. I lost my husband very early in the inquiry. I lost him in March of 2020. My husband lived in care. He had Alzheimer's, from which he'd been living with since his 50s, and he died there on March 31st, 2020,
And
8 days after lockdown.
and what do you hope this inquiry will achieve?
I hope the inquiry achieves what it set out to do in its own mission statement, which is to examine the response to and the impact of COVID-19 pandemic, and mostly to learn lessons for the future. That is what I hope will be achieved.
And when you hear about this battle that's going on with the chair of the inquiry, Baroness Hallett, demanding that the government hands over all this material, WhatsApp messages, diaries, and so on, and the Cabinet Office, as things stand, refusing to do so, I mean,
Mhm.
what do you make of that?
I First of all, it makes me wonder what they have to hide. And the thing is, this very extensive and expensive inquiry is not going to work unless there is transparency and honesty. And I think even to give his diaries would be a way of maybe regaining even a micron of trust in this government, a trust that has been broken again and again and continues to be broken as more revelations come out. Um, so I don't understand why they don't want to cooperate. I find it ironic that while the government is so reluctant to provide evidence and information to the inquiry, the bereaved are desperate to provide their testimony as evidence.
Because presumably you want to know about the decisions that the government made over how to handle the whole question of care homes. And of course, we know that
Mm.
so many thousands of others, as well as your husband, in care homes died during the pandemic.
It's true. And it is important. And in order to learn those things, we have to look at everything honestly. I'm circling back to this idea about the diaries. And yes, there does have to be accountability. We have to be willing to look at what went very wrong. Because this inquiry is for all of us, not just for me who lost my husband in a care home, not just for other people who lost their loved ones in hospitals. But I think we have to make the most of this opportunity so that when this or something like this happens again, we'll be better prepared. Personally, I wouldn't want anyone to go through what I went through and what I'm still going through. And if through a full inquiry with full cooperation from the government and others, we can learn how to handle things better, then that would at least give some meaning to my suffering, to our suffering, the suffering of the COVID bereaved. And you can see it still makes me emotional, but that we can feel that it wasn't for nothing.
As I understand it, you and many of the other bereaved families are not going to be actually giving evidence in person to this inquiry, which is due to begin taking public evidence next month. You've been taking part in this sort of listening exercise. Are you satisfied that you are being able to sufficiently explain what you and others went through?
I have to correct you there. I am not taking part in the listening exercise, which has been rebranded at who knows what cost to Every Story Matters, because in my view, it's simply not suitable for bereaved people. I don't know if you know what it is. It's for everyone in the UK who has suffered any kind of loss. It's a web form. There were many kinds of losses during the pandemics, but to put the loss of a child to COVID, a husband, a mother, a brother, at the same level as the postponement of a wedding, seems at best thoughtless and at worst insulting. I think it's important that the inquiry hears firsthand the emotional impact that this pandemic and the government's handling of some aspects of it have had on bereaved families,
And at the
and
moment,
not
it's not getting that.
No, no, no. Well, the inquiry proper hasn't started yet, but with this listening exercise, it is going to be fed back to them in an anonymized, homogenized form that apparently is at least partially going to be analyzed by AI from a web form. And you can put down figures that say X% of people have lost a family member, but what won't be included in that is the X% of people who can't sleep, who are tortured every day by the thought that their loved ones died without them. I mean, you can see again how this still gets to me. It isn't going away. But if the inquiry does its job, and if the bereaved were allowed to participate and to give their valuable testimony, I believe we could be planning for a future where others wouldn't have to suffer the way that we have.